The information provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes and does not substitute for professional advice.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Another Day, Another Vagina. This is our second season.
Yay! Cheers to us.
Oh, cheers us. Yes.
Season 2.
If you're wondering what we do when we podcast, well, this is it.
Cheers.
So everybody's been wondering, what have we been doing?
Life.
Yeah,
Working, kids. You know,
it's
the
really, Christmas is really a lot, honestly. The beginning of the year is a lot. And so we just needed time. But we're super excited about this second season. We've got lots of guests coming on.
I'm excited. I'm really excited for season 2.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about some risque things, I would say. So,
It's just what the listeners want.
it's what the listeners want for sure. So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
How much sex did you have on our hiatus?
Let me drink.
Would you say a fair amount?
I'll say yeah. I'm going to say a fair amount. How about you?
Somewhat. Well, once a week. Yeah, actually, so last weekend was my stepson's birthday.
Yes.
And first of all, we went roller skating,
That was fun.
but you didn't skate.
I did not skate.
Let
I
me
was
tell you,
cheerleader from the side.
I used muscles I have not used, probably vaginal muscles I have not used since the 90s. So I was exhausted.
Wait, so you don't use those vaginal muscles when you're having sex?
I mean, I don't know.
You must
Is it
be
the
out of tune.
same?
It should be the same.
I don't know. But then I had a bunch of teenage boys spend the night that night.
Which was actually pretty exciting, and we learned quite a bit.
It was exhausting.
Yes.
But yes, we learned quite a bit, and that's going to come on another episode.
To be continued.
And then the next day, we went and played outdoor laser tag.
Okay.
Have you ever done that?
I've done indoor laser tag, but not outdoor.
It is like a freaking Call of Duty game.
Yeah. I want to paintball. I'm a little nervous though, but I do want to try paintball.
2 straight hours. And so when I finally got home, when I say I was tired, my whole body, mind, my soul was dead inside my body. And don't you know, that's a time when my husband decides he wants to get freaky.
Of course, it's always opposite. When they want to, we don't. When we want to, they're tired.
Yeah. And I said, man, look, I'm sorry. I can't. I'm too tired. I can't. If Channing
You
Tatum,
couldn't take it for the team, just lay there?
no, I
Okay.
couldn't even starfish that. That's how exhausted. But if Channing Tatum came in that room, butt ass naked, I'd tell him to walk out the door and turn the light off.
Damn. Okay.
So my husband, he was butthurt.
I figured he would.
It's because I feel like he's always down. He's always, what do they call it? DTF?
I think that's most husbands. I mean, come on.
Okay, so he's always DTF.
Yes.
And I'm just not. I mean, I think a lot of women would say that.
I'm gonna say most marriages. I'm gonna say yes.
And so that leaves my husband with the same question a lot of guys have. Why doesn't she want to do it? Well, we don't know the answer. So luckily, welcome. We have Dr. Laura Jurgens with us, and she's going to answer that question. So welcome, Laura.
Hi. I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, so I'm Dr. Laura Jurgens. I am a sex coach, somatic sexologist, an intimacy and relationship coach, all that jazz. Because we can't deal with sex without dealing with our relationships as much as we might wish. We didn't have to talk about emotions or anything messy like that. So I help individuals and couples with all kinds of just like challenges, and a lot of us, look, we have shit for sex education in this country, and
Yes, we
we
do.
don't even talk about women's pleasure in sex education. We don't talk about women's arousal. We kind of try to go through life like hoping that we'll somehow learn by osmosis or by having sex with a bunch of people who also don't know what's going on. So everybody kind of needs help at some point in their life. And that's what I do. I help people out, help people also, especially just play their way to better sex. Because a lot of times when we have challenges with intimacy, we think it's got to be this big, scary, heavy thing. And we got to go talk to a therapist about our dad or something. But
Okay.
it's like,
Yes.
no, what we need to do is just like get into our bodies, have some open, playful communication with our partners, or, really check in with what's going on with us. And it can be fun, it can be playful. So that's how we go about things in my world. And I work with people both online and in person. And I have a sex podcast, so it's called Sex Help for Smart People. You can listen to it also if you're not a smart person.
I love
Hold
it.
on, I'm writing that down.
If you're a total dumbass, you can listen to it too. But I feel like that's been covered by all the like 400 same articles in Cosmo about sex positions, as if learning some sort of new wacky wheelbarrow thing is going to somehow magically fix our sex lives. So I leave that as like the sex for dummies.
Right.
And we do Sex Help for Smart People as the podcast. So you can find that anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can find me online at myname.com. So that's all my intro. And I'm so excited to be here to talk with you today about why people don't want to have sex, especially women.
So why do you think that I didn't want to have sex last weekend?
Well, I'm a real big fan of believing women when they say things. And
Yeah.
you told us why you didn't want to have sex. You were butt-ass tired, which is, not a time when you felt like your libido, your erotic energy was really there. You probably really needed a nap. And it's a really good idea not to take one for the team.
Correct.
Obligation sex is one of the biggest ways to kill your libido. So when you start having sex when you don't want to, for somebody else and not for your own pleasure, and then you add that up over years, what happens to your sex drive is like, right?
Yeah,
Because it's not for you anymore. And if you had to do anything that was only for somebody else all the time, you already have to do that like as a mom or as a working person. There's enough of that when you bring it into your relationship dynamic and you bring it into your vagina. Like she's going to shut down at some point and be like, yeah, we're not playing that game anymore.
Yeah.
So actually obligation sex is one of the biggest libido blockers that I see. One of the biggest ones that kill women's libido is because the kind of sex they might be getting doesn't really feel particularly satisfying. And you may have a wonderful sexual relationship with your husband. It sounds like you probably do, but there's going to be times when you just don't feel like it. And I think it's awesome that you honored that, because that will make it much more likely that when you do want to have sex, right? You're having sex when you do want to have sex.
Honey, so we've been together 5 years.
Okay.
You, what I had done that weekend, and he still felt, I don't know, like, well, do you just not want me?
Yeah, so it's pretty common for men to get what you said. He was like butt hurt, right?
Right.
And
Right.
there's a lot of pressure on men to not to really like sex is a lot of the ways that they feel like they're entitled to emotional connection because it's a sexual connection. And boys get pretty shut down on a lot of other types of ways of emotional connection. And we see that in, male friendships. They're not snuggling as much, right? Like they're not necessarily kind of all over each other the way that women's friendships are. We feel entitled to do that. We feel entitled to share a lot of innermost challenges with our best friends. But for men, a lot of times the place that they feel they get to have permission to be emotionally connected is in sex. And then you add on to that where it gets really tied in with masculinity, this like feeling wanted and feeling like your partner wants you is this. A lot of men are using that as kind of validation of their own masculinity or their feelings, right? So then when somebody says, no, I don't want to have sex right now, they can get in a habit of taking that personally as if it's about them or as if it's a rejection. Because you didn't mean it as a rejection, right? Like you weren't like, I'm tired at you. I would have sex with all these other people right now, but just not you. Right? That's not where you were at. You weren't like, I'm going out with the football team right now, but I just don't have time for you. So,
sorry, I can only do 17, not 18.
Right? That's not where you were coming from at all. It wasn't meant as a personal rejection. So sometimes this is an issue where couples need to start communicating a little bit like, hey, this is not a rejection. I'm going to want to have sex with you later. You are the person I generally do have sex with. Please take that as a compliment.
Right.
Right.
What, once a month? It's you.
But like, I'm allowed to have times when my body doesn't feel like it. And I'm allowed to have times when I'm not up for it. And the more you support me in that, the more safe I'll feel to like want to jump your bones when I do want to.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you talked about obligation sex because I've had it. Have you?
I think we've all.
We've all had it.
That's just it.
And I feel like, oh, well, if I have obligation sex, that's helping my relationship because it's making him
happy.
Yeah, it's making him happy. But I can see where that's not helping actually when you think about it.
Yeah. So I used to think the same thing. And it took me a while till I realized that actually doing that for too long was really causing a lot of underlying resentment that I hadn't dealt with.
Yeah.
And it was also, the way that our society treats women sexually is so confusing for us so much of the time. We get all these mixed messages about, okay, we're supposed to be sexual, but not too sexual because then we're a whore. Like, right? Like but then when we're married, we're supposed to be magically turned on all the time. But before we're married, we're not supposed to be, right? And then like, we're supposed to be ready to just drop trowel at any moment. Look, and that's just not how humans are built. And the expectations get really overwhelming. It's a subconscious. It's not like we're all thinking this, consciously in our heads, but these are all socialized messages that we've just internalized. They're kind of running in the background, like a little virus back in the back of the computer.
Yeah.
And it can lead to really understandable like ideas. Oh, hey, this is helping my relationship. But if we're having sex for somebody else and we're not really feeling like this is what I want, ultimately, what are we doing with our relationship with our bodies? Because your body, it may not be making a bunch of noise about it, right? Yeah. But it's still internalizing all the ways that we treat her. And when we discount our body, we don't listen to our body, eventually it starts kind of rebelling. Right. Yeah. And it starts saying, actually, you know what? No, I have some boundaries that haven't been respected here, including by us. Right. Because we're kind of overriding our own boundaries when we're having obligation sex. And that can become kind of almost like an emotionally toxic relationship with your own body.
But I love that you brought up the whole sex education. Like it's kind of like a taboo for people. We don't ever talk about what we enjoy because, like you said, you experiment, you try new things, you've slept with a few people, but how else do you know what you like or what you want if you don't get to do that? Most men are not most men have sex for themselves.
Mhm.
Men don't know how to please their significant other, their girlfriends, because their only goal is to get themselves, and that's it.
Yeah. And we've, as a culture, made sex really about men.
Yeah.
Right. And it's defined by what the penis is doing. And when the penis is done, it's like it's over.
Done.
Right.
Yeah,
I
well, they have
mean,
time in that 3 minutes to get you off too.
right.
Yeah.
And so even really well-intentioned men, and I mean, there's a load of them out there, right?
Mhm.
They didn't get any better sex education either. And in fact, they got like porn,
Yes.
right? Which is all made for men, about men. And none of it is actually, when women are having fun in porn, it's for the men. It's a performance.
Yeah.
And so it's all fake, and none of it is actually about how women get off or really have pleasure. So really well-intentioned men will go find a coach like me to help them. And then I get, flowers and chocolates from their lovers because they're so grateful. But a lot of very well-intentioned men just don't know where to start. And what they often do, thoughtfully, is they will ask us.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we have no idea. And we
Yeah.
don't really know. And we don't really feel, sometimes many of us don't feel actually like capable of getting, even if we do know, we can't get it out of our face. Like people have a hard time actually talking about what they want or asking for what they want.
I
Women
do.
especially.
I have a hard time with it.
But do you have a
Yeah.
hard time because you think what you like is not normal, or it's too kinky, or it's you know what I mean? I mean, because that's what a lot of women are like, oh, what if my partner, if I scare them away because I like this, this, and this, and they're not into it, then it's like, where's that common ground for them to both be satisfied?
I think that I battle with feeling embarrassed. And
Mhm.
I think I feel that way. Well, sometimes. I think I feel that way because my family, or the way I was raised, was not very open. It was very strict. I didn't have anyone to discuss how I felt sexuality with me. All I ever heard was, you don't have sex until you get married. Okay. Well, why? Well, and that didn't work out. But but yeah, even though I'm super comfortable with my husband, I am. It still embarrasses me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's super normal. So some of the reasons why women especially have a hard time with it is one, exactly what you're talking about. There's just not a lot of, we're kind of told that this is a taboo topic. We sometimes talk with our very closest friends about it, but even then we may just kind of skim the surface. We may not really talk about what's really challenging for us. And it can be hard, even with really trusted partners, to say, this is what I want, especially because we're a little worried of how they might respond. Right. And it also might just feel really unfamiliar to talk about because we're not normalizing it. So that's something that, people come to me for a lot too. I have a client who, when she first came to me, she couldn't say the word sex without hiding her face.
Oh, wow.
And she's a therapist. And this is not, and she's brilliant, and there's nothing wrong with her for that. That's just, she grew up in a repressive household, never talked about body functions or any sort of sexuality. And it just feels very hard and taboo to get it out of your mouth, right? So having practice and being able to kind of start with baby steps, what is the sort of one thing that you could ask? Right. So maybe you might want, for example, more touch in other places before. This is really common. Guys will go, because guys like it when we go straight to their penis a lot of times, but that is not something that works very well for women. So say, for example, you wanted more like nuzzling and like kind of like over the clothes, like that sort of awesome, hot, delicious, couch, like dry humping. And like, maybe you wanted like some really great, like just touching all over your body for a while first, and you wanted that to go on for more than, 2 minutes. And you might start with just saying, "Hey, babe," next, and do it when you're not having sex. So it's a little easier, right? Because when you're
Yeah.
in the middle of having sex, that's when like he's trying to do it right. And you're noticing that he's got some like sort of emotional, rejection fears in the game and everything. And it can get kind of heightened. But if you do it when you're not having sex and you say, "Hey, next time we have sex, could we do like an extended makeout session on the couch for a while first, where you just like touch me everywhere for like a good solid 20 minutes?" Usually he's going to be like, "Hell yeah, that sounds great.
He'll be like,
That
"Can we
sounds,
again?"
that sounds really fun." You know, um, what do you think he's going to say?
Can we cut it down to 10 minutes? Yeah.
Be like, "You want to be one of those 10-minute guys."
But you know what's so funny? Because as you're talking, I'm like going through my head with my
scenarios?
my sex life scenarios. But yeah, when oh my God, my husband's gonna be like, "Oh my God, all my coworkers are listening to this." But anyway, if he tries to jump right to it, and then I'm like, "Oh, or stop or what?" Yeah, and even though I don't want that, but that makes sense that I need to be worked into it.
Yeah, you need a warm up. Most
That way.
women need a warm up, a really good one. And this is another one of the big reasons why women don't want to have sex, is because we haven't been getting the foreplay that we need.
Mhm.
And so we've been rushing past all of our warm up. And if you look at the sort of way that women's arousal tends to go, so people with vulvas and estrogen based hormones tend to have a really high peak arousal, but it takes a little while to get there.
Yeah.
And so it typically, the average is about 30 to 45 minutes of
Wow.
play, of body play. And we tend to have erogenous zones all throughout our body. So we want all of that to be brought online before there's anything going on in the vulva. And
Yeah.
that, also like helping partners understand that, look, having any sort of stuff stuck in your body is a pretty vulnerable thing. And it's not something that we're all ready for just at the drop of a hat. Right? So, like, if they were, for example, if we were doing anal sex with our partners, if we were pegging this dude, he's going to want some warm up.
Exactly.
So,
That's hilarious.
and I
No,
think actually that is
like,
one of the best things. Anytime
really?
a couple comes to me and he's like, "She won't have anal sex with me," and I'm like, "Have you let her have anal sex with you?"
Oh my God.
I always tell men, just try it once, you'll love it. I promise. Just try it once.
Yeah, they've got a prostate in there. It feels great to them, but they need to experience the vulnerability
Exactly.
and the
So tonight I'm
speed,
gonna
because nothing is as slow as proper butt sex. It is like, should be the slowest possible process.
It has to be slow and steady.
Oh yeah.
You can't just dive right in and then
Really, really slow.
Yes.
Really, really slow, right? So we digressed into butt sex, which is great. But yeah, like, a lot of times people are going to be rushed past their arousal, and men's arousal tends to be a lot faster, a lot quicker on and quicker off. And so that means that if you're in a heterosexual couple, you just spend a lot of time on the woman's arousal first. And he'll get his. Like, we don't have to worry. Like, he's going to get his. If he takes care of his partner and her arousal, and the more she feels like this is for her and this feels amazing, and I'm super turned on. Like, when women get super turned on, oh, it is a powerful force in the world, right? It's like,
that's where, like, I mean, I'm very lucky. My partner is it's always about me first.
mhm.
Doesn't even try. It's just always about me first. I have to get what you get. I have to release first, and then he'll, be beginning for him.
Yeah.
And that's something that I was never used to. men before were typically always just about them.
Yeah.
Or like, right when I was gonna start, they
Yeah.
were done, and it was like, oh, okay.
I think
Thanks.
men don't know that when they think of foreplay, they think of oral sex, and that's it.
But not even oral sex. Like there have been men that I've been with that were like a couple minutes max, and
Yeah.
you're like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the majority of women need 30 to 45 minutes to warm up before anything's touching their vulva, including a tongue. And the average in the United States of average foreplay is like 5 to 11 minutes.
It's not long enough.
So we're just like, no, that's just not right. It's just not a match for what women need. And since most women don't actually orgasm from insertion-based sex,
Mhm.
most women need a lot of clitoral stimulation. We're focused on this like penis and vagina thing. We're just like missing the mark altogether. We're not getting the warm up. We're not getting the actual type of arousal that we need, and then we're not getting the activity that we need,
Yeah.
in order to actually have an orgasm. So it's kind of amazing that any women want to have sex under these conditions.
I mean, I also feel like men use porn as their guide go-to,
Yeah.
and that's just reality.
And expect their wives to do the things that the porn actresses are doing.
But not even that.
Yeah.
It's they expect us to just instantly just turn on and be this dramatic, over the top performer. And it's like, I'm not getting paid thousands of dollars to have sex with you. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not, yeah, that's not how our bodies work. That is a fiction
correct.
that is designed for men to have some entertainment. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that.
There's not, but that's just.
But we need to know that that's not a playbook.
Correct.
Right? And if you want to use that for entertainment purposes because it's hot and you find it sexy, like women and men enjoy porn for that reason. But like know that it's not a guideline. And a lot of men just, again, we don't get the education about, and they don't either, right?
Yeah.
So they're kind of blundering through the world, and they're told they're supposed to know. Like the society kind of tells guys that they're supposed to sort of magically know all this stuff too, and that they're supposed to be in control. They're supposed to be the ones who are initiating, and like they're supposed to know how to get off their girl. And it gets, that all gets internalized for them too. And then they don't know what's going on. So they're just kind of like, why isn't this working?
Right.
Right. But we all need to step back and have a conversation, right? Like, okay, well, how do we approach sexy time with more play, with more openness to everybody's experience, to everybody getting really turned on, right? We have these all these weird myths that we get from movies and TV. They only have probably 25 seconds in their script to show something. So
Yeah.
we think that that's the normal way. Okay, he gives her some roses and then throws her up against a wall and they simultaneously orgasm. It's like, no, that's not how human sexuality works at all.
So I think one thing for me particularly is I'm not as much in the mood if I'm dealing with a lot of stress.
Mhm.
How do you think stress factors in with a lot of women's libido?
I think it's a huge factor, and a lot of women are not recognizing that. So you were mentioning that you get people just coming into your office thinking that it must be their hormones, right? And right, like it must be my hormones. And I can tell you, even if you are menopausal, a lot of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's probably not your hormones. There may be an aspect of your hormones once you hit perimenopause and menopause but that's kind of the easiest thing to deal with of the whole shebang, right? Of the whole list of potential issues. And life stress is one really big one that sometimes people just haven't dealt with. And we're not really taking the time for ourselves to fill our own cups right? We're sitting here trying to pour out everything to everybody else. You know, we've got the work, we got the kids, we got the house, we got the husband. We're trying to do all these things and take care of everybody else and not actually taking the time to relax, learn how to regulate our emotions, learn how to really take care of ourselves. Meanwhile, the whole world is advertising at us all these like quick fixes, right? You're stressed, have this bottle of wine, right? I can promise, you know, it may feel nice and kind of fun and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine, but it's not going to fix your stress, right? You're still going to wake up. Now you're going to feel hungover and you're going to be stressed.
Yeah.
So people dealing with their stress and learning better coping mechanisms, right, than ones that people are just kind of trying to sell you is really helpful for having a better connection with yourself, your body, your sexuality, partner.
Yeah, we'll have patients come in. They'll say, "I cry every single day, and I don't want to have sex with my husband. So yeah, I need my hormones checked and fixed." And we're like,
Let's do a depression screen on you.
if you're crying every day and you're dealing with this and that, and yeah, okay, you don't want to have sex with your husband, I'm not shocked. There's not a magic pill.
No.
There's not a magic birth control pill, you know, and if you suggest, well, anxiety, no, I've never been anxious, but you cry every day. So do you see a lot of anxiety, depression, mental health sort of things that you think is also causing lower libido?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are I think a lot of people in our society, and especially in this sort of like the COVID world, really threw people for a lot of loops, right? We got a lot of spikes in anxiety and depression during that time in particular, and we're still seeing a lot of that. But people in general in our modern society are in many ways often disconnected from ourselves, and we're sort of spending so much time striving that we're trying to get the job, or just like everything's externalized, looking for all of these sort of benchmarks that we think we're supposed to hit, and we're not necessarily learning a lot of the important emotional, helpful self-regulation and helpful coping mechanisms. So absolutely, people will, and people, I've been seriously depressed. I was for many years seriously depressed, and it was a lot of it was I had turned a lot of the negative, just thoughts that I had against myself, and I was really mean to myself on the inside. And a lot of people are walking around with horrible self-talk, and that's contributing too. So for whatever reason, the stress, anxiety, etc., depression is happening, it's really important to have that treated. And it can be treated, right? And usually you will come out the other side of that process feeling so much better about your own capacity, so much more empowered to have a really fulfilling life, that oftentimes wow, actually I'm kind of glad that that even happened to me,
Yeah.
right? Because I learned how to take care of myself. And when we model that, for our kids, for example, when kids see parents not taking care of themselves, that's what they learn. They
Yeah.
learn by what we do, right? Not what we say. And when they see you taking care of yourself, taking time for yourself, taking time to de-stress, getting any sort of help that you need for mental and emotional wellness, sexual wellness, connection, whatever, that is a really powerful lesson.
Yeah.
What about like trauma?
Yeah, so trauma is another big one, and a lot of people have unrecognized trauma, undealt with trauma. A lot of women have sexual trauma or just emotional and sort of developmental trauma from a difficult childhood, for example, or some difficult experiences.
Yeah.
That we've often said, well, it's not that big of a deal, or I shouldn't be that upset by this because other people have it worse and we haven't dealt with it. Or we've dealt with it in ways that are not actually helping, right? We've sort of acquired some addictions, which might be trying to distract us from our trauma, right? And that could be being addicted to scrolling on Instagram. It could be all kinds of things. Or maybe we've been trying to see sort of the wrong kind of therapist who's not actually a trauma specialist. So if you do have sexual trauma or really sort of traumatic experiences emotionally or in your childhood attachments, that can really affect how your libido plays out, right? Your sex life, your interest, and it can be kind of a call to get it addressed. So some really good ways to approach that are to see somebody who does some, EMDR is a really good trauma approach. People may have heard of that. That's eye movement desensitization, right? So EMDR, IFS, internal family systems, is a really good trauma approach. Somatic experiencing. Those are the three I recommend to people. They're more active than just going to see a talk therapist, where you'll oftentimes kind of re-traumatize yourself. And it's important to get the right interventions, because we now know that trauma is really held in the body more than any place else. So it's like in our tissues, and doing some sort of somatic work is really the most effective way to deal with it.
Okay.
That's so interesting, because I guess I always thought that trauma was mental.
Yeah, that's the sort of historical view, is we think that trauma is mental, but we actually know now there's been some really great work. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and that is a good summary of sort of the way that we've learned about how the body holds on to trauma. And there's some great work by Peter Levine and other people just showing that, humans as animals, we don't rid ourselves of trauma as well, because of all of the sort of mental and social animals, right? We think we kind of shut down our body's response to trauma, and we don't discharge it as well physically as some other animals. So if you're, a gazelle who gets attacked by a lion, for example, but somehow maybe the lion gets distracted and you get away, you manage to sneak off, right? That animal will lay there and just twitch and get rid of all this activation energy from the adrenaline in their body, and then go off and have a normal gazelle life.
Yeah.
But humans, we kind of shut down and hold a lot of that activation energy in our bodies, and we internalize it and don't release it very well. We don't think it's socially acceptable. We don't know how to do it. So having some modalities that help us actually release a lot of the energy that's trapped in tension, typically in our bodies, is really helpful.
So we pretty much just bury it.
Yeah, and then it comes out physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you bury it, then it comes out in physical symptoms and emotional symptoms. Yeah,
So
but it's possible to heal from any sort of trauma. It absolutely is. And so it's not like trauma is not, a curse. You don't have to carry it through your life forever.
So you can have a normal sex life.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've met people who've had, forcible removal of some of their genitals. They've been victims of female genital mutilation, and they've overcome that kind of trauma. But, victims of really some of the most horrific things you can imagine happen to people, and they've come out the other side. They may have some scars, right? They may have some ways that they need to do things. And, I myself had a lot of trauma. And that's one of the reasons that I came into this field in the first place, was because when I healed from that, it was so powerful. I wanted to help other people.
Yeah.
But it's very possible. And yeah, there's a few things that I need. I know this about myself, and I've learned. I have a partner when I have a new partner, we need to talk a lot about what kind of consent I need. I need a lot of being asked. You can't just jump at me. Things will go badly. I'm also pretty strong, so I might take you down if that happens. But I need a lot of being asked. Anytime somebody's going to escalate with me, there's certain ways that I like to be asked, but I can have a conversation about that, teach somebody how to do it, and then it calms my nervous system and I feel safe and we're good to go. Right.
You know,
So you may learn
just-
about yourself that you have some coping mechanisms, but it's not like a death sentence to your sex life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just like lay behind you and try to stick you with it. And
Why men think that's like such a turn on? It's not.
I know you're like, oh my God, what was that? Oh. Yeah, you know, and then,
I don't mind, when it's like morning wood and you just kind of get like inadvertently poked, like I find that kind of cute, but it's still kind of pokey, right? But definitely nobody's ever gonna no. Yeah, no. There
mean,
should be no sneaking up on anybody ever.
Right.
Consent is really important, and I'm glad some like younger generations are learning this, although I think it's outside of like my practice and other coaches that I know who are teaching it in a sexy way. I think a lot of people aren't realizing it can be sexy. It can be so sexy to have somebody ask or somebody say, I really want to do this thing to you. Are you ready for that? That can be amazing. There's ways to keep it sexy, but still asking and acknowledging that everybody has a right to say no.
So what we need is just a whole new sex ed for adults.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
bring the banana. You
I got
bring
the
the condom.
condoms.
Yeah, you bring the condom. Start with that.
I don't even bother with bananas. I have a whole, those fancy makeup cases that the really high-end makeup artists have that have, the 50 different drawers.
Yeah.
I have one of those that's filled with sex toys. So
Nice.
my job is super fun. I can bust out pretty much any sex toy to demo things. My sex doll that I use for like my vulva demonstration is a little bit large and she won't fit in there. But otherwise, we don't have to do bananas anymore because we're adults. We can buy good dildos.
Though. We do need lube now, though. Lube's a big
We need a
thing.
lot of lube because the world needs more lube. Yes.
Could you imagine bringing that sex doll into like a gymnasium of a high school? And then you'd be like, everyone gather around.
I know, and I just wish they made them that weren't like with the fake boobs and stuff like that. Like I'm really looking for one who's got regular boobs that actually work the way boobs work instead of sort of against gravity. But
I mean, I think it's like falseness for these young, teenage boys that have TikTok and YouTube to reference sex ed for, because that's not reality. It's just
Yeah.
it's not. Their expectations are way up here, where they need to really come back down here until they can learn and mature, which is what we learned last week. I was so like floored by these young kids and the terms that they use.
But then what's funny is medical terms like vulva not allowed.
They're like, "Ooh, what?
Yeah,
Don't
you-
say that."
You can't say those things in the high school.
Vagina.
Yeah,
Penis. Like,
I can't tell you how much of a backlash we have just for using the word vagina in our podcast name.
Oh, I can imagine. And vagina is so much more acceptable than vulva, even though for women, most of our anatomy is the vulva, and that's the stuff that feels really good to us. That's where most of our nerve endings are. So that's a problem, right? And I mean, when we think about it, it's just sexism. Let's just call it out, right? It's the patriarchy getting in the way of us having a great sex life. And it's too bad, but that's the reality of the situation. Is like there's all this shaming around sex, but then there's also all of this like kind of demeaning type of terminology or like self-aggrandizing from teenage boys where they're trying to kind of act like they're cool to their other guy friends or something by putting down girls. And that's just it's just a holdover. It's the same thing we all got, right?
Mhm.
But it's just, they're going to eventually realize that they will need to actually at least act like they might respect women if they want to get any.
That's the hope.
Let's hope. But unfortunately, like being, if you're a heterosexual woman, like trying to find a really well-informed feminist man can be really challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a hard row to hoe, or
No,
a hard hoe to row, or whatever.
Knows.
no.
Yeah, I mean, my husband is very open, but no, I don't think he understands the plight of women. I don't think a lot of men do, which is why watching our show is a great idea for them, to be honest.
Exactly.
Yeah, 'cause
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you want to have more, like, better connection with your partner, you want to respect your partner, and knowing something about their experience in the world is really important.
yes. So, so the people that are going to watch this podcast and then they realize, oh yeah, I do have these things going on. Would it be best for them to reach out to you and your website and your podcast? Should they look for local coaches? I mean, what would be
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. So it can be really hard to find good help in this area. There are a lot of different types of professions that will help in the sex and intimacy world. And so a lot of times people will not know where to go, and they'll start with their doctor.
Yeah.
And most of the time, doctors get maybe 5 hours of sexuality training if they're lucky. Most doctors, they just don't get a lot. Even like pelvic physical therapists don't get a lot on sexuality. So it's not really the best place to go. You can, and most therapists are also similarly not very well versed and very uncomfortable around sexuality topics. So you can go to a sex therapist. They typically will be more sort of talk, just you're just going to talk about stuff, right? And you're going to talk about your past a lot because it's therapy.
Yeah.
So some other people you can go to, I think what I do is I'm in a coaching space. And so that gives me a little more leeway for the type of work I can do. I can do demonstrations with people. Everything I do is clothes on and, no genital touching or anything. But I do sometimes, like I may touch clients because I may be showing them, for example, how to throw their partner up against a wall in like a safe, sexy way, right? We may be exploring with stuff like learning how to have, like, what kind of touch you like, or what kind of boundary, like how to express a boundary, practicing, right? Because practicing is the best way to learn anything. So for people like me in the sort of more kind of coaching space, you can, look at their quality varies just like any profession, right? Lawyers, surgeons, we want to look at their credentials. We want to get a sense of them. You can also just go to my podcast, Sex Help for Smart People, as a way to sort of dip a toe in the water, or find me on my website. And if I'm not a good fit for you, I can refer you to somebody who might be, or somebody who might be more local to your area. Because we do have, I have some colleagues, there's not a ton of us, but there are colleagues around the country and in other parts of the world too.
Now, is this therapy, coaching, is it something that insurance covers, or is it more just kind of out of pocket?
Yeah, so most sex therapists and sex coaches, so most sex therapists and all sex coaches are going to be private pay.
Okay.
Because it's not typically covered by insurance. And this is, again, one of the problems with sex being such like a weirdly taboo topic, even though it's an enormous part of adult humans, right? Our lives. But this idea that it's sort of like a fringe benefit and not something that we're all entitled to have, healing and pleasure around is one of the problems in our society. And it's one of the reasons why we don't have insurance coverage for all of these different types of therapies and modalities.
Okay.
And some of them are even illegal. There's sexological body workers who will help people with, more hands-on genitals. There's a great example of one in that, like, gosh, there was a show on Netflix. It was like a Gwyneth Paltrow Goop thing. And there was a sexological body worker who was doing some of that hands-on body work with a woman. And who, this is really helpful for people who, for example, don't know how to orgasm and they may need some help, right? But that's actually an illegal profession in most states. So it can be hard to find somebody, and you might need to go through a referral network.
Okay. Good
Okay,
to know.
so
Good to know.
we'll get on that.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, we want to thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
You've taught us a lot.
Very informative. Very, very informative.
This was really fun, y'all. I really appreciated it. And thanks for all the work you do in the world.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching.
Yes, till next time.
Yeah, till next time. Add us on TikTok because we have to have 1,000 followers before we can go live. We want to do some weird stuff on there. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, add us on TikTok.
That sounds fun.
Thank you again.
Thank you again, Laura.
Dr. Laura Jurgens for joining us. Thank you to Brian Beeline for creating our new videos that we're going to upload. So,
Yes.
you guys have a good day. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.